If you've spent any time studying the day-to-day realities of the Second World War, you already know this. Troops didn't survive on tactics alone. They survived on calories, improvisation, and a constant chess match against scarcity. One of the most overlooked aspects of wartime life, whether on the front lines or deep in occupied towns, was the art of hiding food. Not just storing it, hiding it so well that even trained soldiers walked right past it. And here's the truth, most documentaries gloss over. The best hiding spots weren't in basements or barns. They were in places so ordinary, so unremarkable, that no one even thought to search them. For the next few minutes, I want you locked in. Because once you understand these forgotten Second World War concealment tactics, you start seeing history with sharper eyes, and you walk away with practical methods you can still use today. This isn't theory. These are researched, field-tested tricks used by civilians, resistance cells, and frontline soldiers who needed to keep a few meals ahead of starvation. Let's step into their world and study the silent war for food. One of the safest hiding spots was inside wall cavities that already looked damaged. During bombings, artillery hits and structural stress, houses cracked and crumbled. Anyone searching a home expected a damaged wall. They didn't expect that someone had widened a crack, just enough to store canned goods, smoked strips of meat, or dry grain. Civilians in Warsaw, Rotterdam and Cologne frequently use pre-existing war damage as natural camouflage. The trick was simple. Never create new damage. Instead, exploit what already existed. A modern prepper could apply this by using maintenance gaps behind mounted shelves or inside hollow pillars that already have inspection access. The key is blending necessity with existing imperfection, so the hiding spot never draws a second glance. Another rarely searched location was beneath wooden floorboards in high-traffic rooms. You'd think heavy military boots stomping through a home would make this risky, but that's exactly why it worked. Soldiers focused on basements, attics and storage rooms, anything associated with supplies. They ignored living rooms and dining spaces because they seemed too open and too exposed to bother with. Families learned to lift just 1 or 2 boards, stash preserved potatoes, or wrapped dry bread inside a shallow cavity, and replace the boards so naturally that even pressure from boots didn't give it away. The modern application is straightforward. Use your busiest rooms for shallow, sealed, hard-to-detect storage rather than out-of-the-way areas that look like storage zones. Food was often concealed inside non-food containers, especially fuel and tool equipment. German and Soviet troops alike rarely wasted time checking the interiors of fuel tins, broken lantern housings, or toolboxes unless they were actively looking for sabotage. That blind spot helped countless families survive, you know. They cleaned small containers thoroughly, lined them with cloth, and filled them with dried beans, oats, salt, or biscuits. The brilliance came from deception. Put food where it makes no logical sense to be. And, well, today this approach still works. A prepper could store emergency rations inside old paint buckets, defunct appliance housings, or empty toolboxes. The principle is simple. If an object signals inconvenience, filth, or low value, it becomes invisible to searchers. One of the most resourceful hiding spots was inside livestock enclosures and feed structures. In rural Europe, occupying soldiers routinely searched barns, but they didn't inspect the internal framing of chicken coops, rabbit hutches, or feed chutes. Resistance groups frequently inserted sealed ration tins behind the slats or under removable nesting boards. No soldier wanted to sift through animal bedding unless they had specific intelligence. This method still holds value, honestly. For anyone keeping poultry or rabbits today, the framing and flooring of their enclosures create perfect concealed compartments. Even without animals, standalone garden structures work because they appear mundane and disorganized. Clergy houses and religious buildings concealed food inside furniture meant for ceremonial use. Priests and monks across France, Poland and Greece hid dry goods inside confessionals, beneath raised lecterns or behind altars. Soldiers, particularly those with limited religious familiarity, rarely dismantled sacred furniture. These weren't emotional hiding spots. They were strategic. The furniture was heavy, ornate, and spiritually risky to tamper with, creating psychological protection. For a modern equivalent, consider storing food inside furniture with layers, compartments, or built-in risers that aren't obvious. Anything that appears difficult or inappropriate to inspect naturally deters prying eyes. One of the boldest hiding methods involved burying food under recently installed paths or stepping stones. Burying supplies was common, but most soldiers knew to check disturbed soil. What they rarely checked were recently laid stones, bricks, or compacted paths that looked like small home improvements. Families would dig shallow troughs, bury jars or wax food bundles, then lay simple stepping stones over them. No loose soil, no obvious signs. Today, the principle remains incredibly useful. Conceal items beneath fixed outdoor features rather than in open buried caches. A few flat stones or pavers can hide weeks' worth of shelf-stable goods in airtight tubes. One of the smartest and most underestimated hiding spots was inside musical instruments and bulky household items that soldiers didn't want to transport. Old accordions, hollow-bodied guitars, large radios and sewing machine stands often became emergency food vaults. Soldiers typically searched big items only if they intended to confiscate them, and most didn't want the hassle of carrying them. That reluctance created opportunity. Civilians quietly hollowed unused cavities inside these objects and stored compact foods like sugar cones, tea bricks and dried fruits. For modern use, any ignored or outdated household item with internal volume, a broken speaker, an unused printer, an empty amplifier shell, can serve the same purpose. Across Europe and the Pacific, people didn't just hide food. They played psychological judo against those searching for it. They understood human behavior, military urgency, and the biases of occupying troops. That's the real lesson worth carrying forward. Your best hiding place isn't the one that's deepest or strongest. It's the one that looks too obvious or too boring to matter. If you want more historically grounded survival strategies backed by real wartime records and field accounts, make sure you subscribe, share this breakdown with a fellow history buff, and help grow the Prepper Historian community.